Hello, welcome to CAREER22, a series of videos about the skills we need for a career in the 22nd century. My name is Miguel.
And I'm Milton.
And we are both founders of Ungap Education and both university professors. And after several years teaching and helping our students to kickstart their careers, we realized that this is one of the most critical and one of the most stressful processes in their lives, to choose and to find and choose the meaningful career journey they dream. So that's why we decided to bring our learnings into this series of videos and try to explain how to start a career in a meaningful way. So what is our topic for today, Milton?
So today we thought of talking about reflection and the importance of reflection to anchor your experiences and to be able to make conscious choices of things you want to do and also the things you don't want to do. What we realize that a lot of people go on with their lives without spending enough time to reflect, to take note of their experiences, to be more mindful about what is happening around them. And also to be more conscious about how you feel, about the impact of your choices and the things you're doing, so that you can make more conscious choices moving further. And it's interesting because we take this somehow for granted, that we know what's happening. But often we let life happen without spending enough time really having thoughtful, deep reflections about your reality. And in this time and age where everything is fast and everything is very, very high pace, it becomes even harder. So reflection calls for a lot of discipline, and this is what we would like to talk about today.
So it's about not only living, but also thinking about what you are living and experiencing, right? It's not only, taking decisions, but also, reflecting on why you're taking that decision and why, you actually decided that way. Okay, can we give examples of, situations where reflection was critical in someone's life?
Well, what we see often the happening is that people our age, right? People that have worked hard for a big part of their lives already, and they get to this midpoint and they look back and they realize, oh gosh, what has happened here, right? And why am I in this sort of roller coaster without feeling that my life actually makes sense? And this we see with the very famous midlife crisis in a way is often that sort of moment where you're hit with that sort of confrontation that maybe the life you're living is not the life that you would like to live, and that you maybe were living someone else's life. And in order to stay put and be able to take that that moment as an opportunity again to reinvent yourself, you need to reflect. You need to talk to other people. You need to talk to friends. You need to talk to people who you worked with. You need to take time away. You need to, take stock of your life and your experiences. And we've seen many senior executives out there that have transformed their lives in that particular moment. But we think this can also apply early in your career as well. So there's plenty of cases where people, through reflection are able to make more sound and mindful decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I have a couple of examples. In one of the schools where we teach, a lot of students actually, in the end, they go to these career fairs. They go to these company presentations where they are pitched about how fantastic it is to work in the company A, B, or C, and they actually went, with an open mind, but they are kind of evangelized by those companies that actually paint a little bit brighter future and brighter lives. And then after a couple of years, actually experimenting on that particular job, company, career path, they realize that, they are not happy. And we see a backlash of people, actually really, really miserable because they were pursuing and having the expectation of finding, you know, an epiphany, the lightning bolt that comes from the happiness world, but they actually don't like. And I see many people that come back to the school to say, I need a pivot in my life. I need to do something different. So my question is, why does this only happen after you hit the wall?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And talking about that is that you need to build in somehow that discipline and a process so that you are almost forced to think about what you want, what you care about, and upon your experiences. Let me just give you another example of something that we did at the previous business school where I was working before in the Netherlands. We had a program in place where every single student had to reflect upon their sort of purpose at some point, knowing that eventually that purpose would change, right? We're not trying to force you to define your entire life in that particular moment, but to think, all right, how do I want to make use of this program, this degree that I'm studying for something that I care about? And that simple fact that you were able to, even for a few minutes, to concentrate on what you wanted and to synthesize into a compelling message, that was enough even to improve the success rate and to reduce the turnover rate of students throughout their studies. So it's interesting to see that that simple sort of exercise of goal setting and reflecting upon the things you care about can have an instrumental impact in terms of your performance, in terms of career, in terms of academic performance. And it just takes that. It just takes sort of sometimes just as 5 minutes a year for you to reflect. What do I want? What is the next step for me? And that requires some discipline. In this case, we set the discipline for them. We told them, you have to do this. It's part of your journey. But we think everyone can do that as long as you create sort of instruments of reflection whereby you can have a process of every now and then take stock and set your goals.
So great. So reflection is it basically the simple act of thinking about what's happening, thinking about how you feel, and try to extract some lessons learned about what you're experiencing. And this is critical for your career, right? It's critical for finding and shaping and crafting your journey, your professional journey into what you can call a meaningful career journey. So I think that we both agree that it is very difficult, right? It's difficult because it's not only a process, conscious, but it's also a discipline, thing. So how can we, hack reflection into my life in order to, to be so mindful about my career? So a couple of hacks, a couple of tips.
Yeah. Well, my first recommendation there, my first hack would be the idea of journaling, which is not exactly spectacular. It's not like a breakthrough idea, but it's amazing how much we talk about these things, but in the end, we don't do it. But the process of writing, and this is why journaling is so important, is that in that process of writing, you are in a way becoming more mindful of your own experience. Because our mind is not always very conscious about what's happening. You might think you are, but your level of attention is rather limited in terms of what it feels. And, so it's very important that you write it down because it forces you to articulate your experience.
And to think about it, right?
To think about it. Right? So it's not even that what you write down is a piece of literature. Of course, it's not what we're trying to get, but it's by forcing you to write about your experiences and about what you would want, you are becoming more mindful and more aware of how you feel, what you care about, what you like, what you don't like, and how you would like to move forward with that. So writing down is very important. Every now and then, take time just to write down, about your life and about the goals you would like to set. That would be my first hack.
First hack, but it's difficult to write for some people, right? So in my case, I'm more a visual guy. So for me, it helps me to kind of go more for bullets or go for a drawing representation, not a painting, but kind of a diagram or a flow or things that the metaphor, visual thinking that helps me to reflect. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So
that,
some people I know actually write poems. Others indeed are more into diagrams and more pragmatic and more concise and bullet points. It doesn't matter, whatever it is that helps you to build a narrative about your life and how you want to move forward.
okay, any recommendation? Should we do it in the morning? Should we do it in the late evening? Should we do it in the weekends? Should we do it, all day long? What are there any
You
best
need to,
practices?
you need to find your sweet spot there, because some people really say you need to write every day. I mean, for me, for instance, that's too much. I take stock about my week, right, on a Sunday, right? I write down what's been happening so far, what happened in in the other day. How do I want to move forward with the rest of the week? What are the key priorities for me moving forward? Key takeaways that I take. So on a weekly basis, more in-depth reflection works really fine for me. Maybe others will need to do it every month, and others maybe need to do it every day. You need to find your own pace and your own rhythm in that.
Cool. Okay, and have another one and another tip.
Yeah, I have one more, and this is again something that I take from my own personal experience, but also from working with many people out there, more and less experienced professionals. And of course, the more senior people you talk to, the more they tell about the importance of the gut feeling, right? And if I look at the past, I have the things that I somehow, you could say, regret the most, although I've learned a lot from that as well. And in that possibility mindset, I see it as also looking back, I see it as great learning experiences. What I notice is that every time I didn't listen to that gut feeling, somehow I regret it afterwards. And the gut feeling is something very, very rough. It's not something that gives you exactly, pay attention to this. It's just a sort of feeling that something is not right, or something is out of place, or something is strange or unusual. And if you listen to that carefully, that is a trigger for you to think, okay, what's going on here? Why is it that I feel what I feel? And forces you to be more mindful about your environment. And in that process, you're more able to, detect things that might be important for you, to be more mindful about your choices. So that gut is a very rough instrument, but it's an important one to tell you that something needs to be addressed, something that you need to pay attention to. So for me, that would be a very important one. Whenever the gut is telling you something, even if it's not clear what it is, take time to reflect upon what's happening in your life, because there might be some rough diamonds in there.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so you to force the discipline, you say journaling is a good tool, and and you open up a little bit here the discussion about what is reflection. Is not only your brain, but it's also a little bit of emotional while connecting you to the gut feeling. Great. So now let's talk about mistakes. Big fuck ups in terms of reflection. And I can start with that. I like fuck up. So the first fuck up I see is people insist in in being alone. And what I mean is sometimes we are kind of ashamed. We are kind of a little bit introverted about our reflections and our learnings, that we tend to think that we can do everything alone. And actually what I've learned is that if you try to do it alone, you will only get a fraction of the reality, a perspective which is your own. It's important your own, but I think you should try to mirror yourself with others. So clearly a good practice would be reflection peers, reflection group. So you have like-minded people, but with a, you know, a different approach. I think it enriches a lot your reflection, because sometimes the people that are from outside will mirror your own feelings, emotions, or even your own life or your experiences in a new you know, in a new frame that will bring so many insights that I think they are precious. So I think big fuck up is when you think that you can do it all alone. Now the second one could be a little bit about looking at your past, at your you know, at your CV, let's call it like that, and just as a superficial way, without actually getting to understand what have you you know, done, achieved, and learned in each one of the cycles. And I think that if you look at some CVs, if you look at some, you know, interviewing people, we see that, you know, people are just too superficial about what they have done, why have they done it, and what have they taken from that experience. And being by superficial, I mean, you know, just looking and being observational. Yeah, I did this, it happened this, I achieved these results, you know. But I think what's really key to grow your career and your own, you know, your own journey is when you think about what have you taken from each one of those experiences. And the best, you know, career pitches, the best, you know, CVs, the best LinkedIn profiles that I see is, you know, people that actually build learnings and lessons learned in any experience, even if it's failing, even if it's a hobby, even if it's, you know, something that you did on the side, complements your curriculum or whatever. And I think having the ability to do sprint reviews on the closing of each cycle, kind of, you know, I've done this, why have I done this, how have I done this, and what have I learned, is a critical thing. So don't fuck up by not looking back with an analytical view.
And if you allow me just to add a few one last point there, Miguel, before we close this block here, is that the other thing, of course, is that, you know, too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing, right? And I've seen also sometimes people fail because they just reflect too much. So reflection should be there as in support of action, not in replacing action. So if you are too much reflective, too much in a paralysis by analysis mode, you won't get anywhere. So reflection is there to support and sustain your action, is not there to replace action. So too much reflection is not a good thing either. So very careful to keep it in balance.
So we have to balance everything, right? So this was a little bit reflections on reflection. And this was another episode of Career 22. Final words, Milton.
Well, be out there, be more in action mode if you want, but don't forget to build the discipline of reflection to be successful and mindful about the career you want to develop.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye-bye.